to your Truth Social post on Canada specifically, why are you deciding to end trade talks with Canada, and what rate are you looking to set?
So Canada put a charge on some of our companies, and Canada's been a very difficult country to deal with over the years. We hear Canada, we have a great relationship with the people of Canada, but it's been very difficult, and they put a charge, and they were a little bit early, we found out about it. So, and we have all the cards, we have every single one. We don't want to do anything bad, but they have, economically, we have such power over Canada. I'd rather not use it, but they did something with our tech companies today trying to copy Europe. They copied Europe. It's not going to work out well for Europe either, and it's not going to work out well for Canada. They were foolish to do it. And so I said, we're going to stop all negotiations with Canada right now until they straighten out their act. Okay?
Is there anything Canada can do to change your mind about this situation?
Well, no, they put a tax on companies that were American companies that they shouldn't. Very severe tax. And I guess they could remove it. They will, but it doesn't matter to me. We have all the cards. We do a lot of business with Canada, but relatively little. They do most of their businesses with us. And when you have that circumstance, you treat people better. They've had farmers that are getting like 300, 400, 200% in tariffs. Nobody's ever said anything like it. We have cases, you don't read this and the people don't report, but they charge us 400% on some dairy products. 400%. Nobody writes that. It's not fair to our farmers, and we've got to protect our farmers.
So this has kind of been the big news as of lately. I wanted to kind of just dabble into this. We're going to give you, first of all, the links to actually watch all of this stuff in its full, because the mainstream media likes picking stuff apart. And I've noticed here, especially yesterday, that the propaganda arm has bringing up this whole, well, we should cut off their oil. Well, we should cut off their fertilizer. Well, we should. How come it's always the things in the West? The main money makers, the actual true power of Canada's economy that the East keeps trashing and trying to hold back, that are always the best negotiating tool. I mean, Eastern Canada's really got to wake up. I've said this a few times. This whole Western independence, this could very well be the slap or the kick in the groin to the East to maybe actually make them realize how their policies for the last 40, 50 years, the idiocracy of their decisions, voting in just the most lucid ideas, especially this latest new Liberal Party, how detrimental it is to Canada. And they're pushing the line. The Western independence movement, it's been growing every day. People are getting smart. They are studying it. And like I said on a previous episode, this is why the Independence Party, the Republican Party of Alberta, didn't do very well in their last election. It's because people realize that you don't split a government and allow a socialist party to take over when there is no independence yet to be governed. You need to create the referendum to force the motion. Then the parties will sort themselves out and you will see them on a ballot as a independent nation. So I'm going to dive right into this whole Carney whisperer bullcrap, elbows up, head in the sand, Eastern ideology, and just kind of debunk a lot and just try to get out all of the information that mainstream's trying to hide from you. So I'm going to start off with Kevin O'Leary. He did an interview here a day ago I think is crucial for, well, everybody to see, especially my viewing audience. I'd like to thank all my new subscribers and thank you to all of my regular watchers for helping me beat these algorithms. They don't like me. They don't like the truth. And you guys, by sharing, liking, subscribing, are definitely getting it out there. So press on. Thank you so much. Let's get on. Kevin O'Leary.
Trump says U.S. will end trade negotiations with Canada over their digital services tax. Canada was planning on taxing U.S. tech companies. Trump says he's not going to do that. Let's get right to Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful himself. Kevin, was Trump right all along on the tariffs?
So this particular tiff, fight, disagreement, whatever you want to call it, started in 2019 under the reign of the idiot king, Justin Trudeau. It was bad policy then, it's bad policy now. It's causing a major rift, a 3% tax on tech companies operating in Canada. This whole thing between Canada and the United States, the whole thing's stupid. There should be no tariffs in either direction. Here's why. These jurisdictions, these geographies are joined. You don't have to sell the country. You don't have to merge the countries. But Canada has all the power, the water, the paper, the minerals, rare earths, everything. And the U.S. has the largest market. There should be no tariffs in any direction, north, south, east, west. It's a unique situation. And you do that to create wealth for both countries to fight off China. We're in a war with China because China's coming over the north. So the whole idea of all this crapola is a waste of time. And so really, I look at this saying it's just more negotiation. It's irrelevant. It's going to get worked out. But the whole thing's stupid. There's still a tariff on butter coming out of Vermont at 200% going into Quebec. How stupid is that? It's all stupid. It's all stupid. And at the end of the day, that's why they got rid of the idiot king. They put a new prime minister in place, and he's trying to fix things. But the Canadian economy has been decimated. Zero GDP growth, massive debt. It took 9 years to wipe it out. But the idiot king is gone, and there's a new guy now, and he's got to get this thing worked out fast.
We love Kevin O'Leary. Nobody makes
Now, Carney's a businessman, so he's giving Carney he's giving Carney a chance. O'Leary's been he's a major investor in both economies, the United States and Canada. So he always says things in a business way until, like what he calls the idiot king, Governor Turd. He tried in the first few years. And when he realized what was going on in the decimation to the Canadian economy and the market, and how socialism was speedily being pushed in, he started to voice his opinion more and more and more until the last couple years, where he went off the cliff and just said it as it is. So he's going to do the same thing with Carney. But he's absolutely right in what he's saying, statistically and financially. This whole trade thing is pure insanity. It's stupidity. Why our dollar plummets when our government forces us to be more of a assembly line as opposed to a builder economy. This is the liberal, this is how they buy votes, the textile part of it, this whole small factories, bring in components from all over the world, and we can build them and then we'll sell them. And this is the goal, because then the government can collect tax after tax after tax after tax, as opposed to what the United States has been doing for, over 100 years, unleashing the power of the entrepreneur and allowing them to build up the economy. So the United States is the economy. And if Canada wants to actually profit and do well, there should be no trade barriers. Then our dollar would be inexplicably locked with theirs. We wouldn't see the peso we have today. Our dollar is worth crap. We were par just before Trudeau took over. And we've been in a constant slide downhill ever since. It's because of socialist policies. We're living beyond our means, and you've got children at the helm. So O'Leary's just given Carney a little bit of a chance. But trust me, Carney's even worse. Carney's the guy who's been guiding Governor Turd for the last 9.5 years. Nothing's changed. But now you have the true dictator in control. we're going to move on. This is the interview that mainstream is clipping little snippets out for you. I'm going to show you a lot more because that's why I started the channel. Sorry. So sorry. Just the facts.
You just had a big success at NATO, getting the members to agree to spend more on defense. Is there anything you can do to get Congress to codify this? To get their governments to codify it?
You can, what you do, the best insurance is if they don't do it, you leave. You don't do business with them anymore. You don't do business. You have to have a certain trust, but you can also say trust but verify. But we're making unbelievable deals.
There is litigation around the legality of those tariffs. Are you going to be able to get more trade deals done before you hear from the International Court of Appeals in August?
Sure, but we won the litigation and we had the delay and we had some radical left judge and then we had it overturned. And we're doing well in all of our litigation. We're doing well on the tariff litigation. Look, if some judge said we can't do tariffs, we would fall prey to the rest of the world who would do tariffs and are doing tariffs on us. If we couldn't fight them back with tariffs, this country would be in terrible shape. We would be like this innocent lamb being led to slaughter. So, no, we're doing great on economics. We're doing great on tariffs. Tariffs is just a part of it. We're drilling like never before. That's how the oil got down low.
The Supreme Court victory that you got today, Friday, do you think that could apply to the tariff litigation that's pending here in terms of the legality of your tariffs? Does that affect that at all?
It could, but again, the tariff litigation, if you look at it, there are alternatives if we have to use them. They're not as good because they're not as direct. They're not as biting, but they're very good. So that you have alternatives, but we want to use this particular asset, this particular grouping, the words of this are so beautiful, they were meant for it. But what happens with the tariffs is that if a judge ruled against us, and this is part of how you win, fairness is also a part of the law. If a judge ruled against us on tariffs, we would fall prey to other countries destroying us. We can't do that. If they do tariffs on us, we do tariffs on them. If they charge us, we charge them. Then they never charge us.
So that just debunked pretty much a lot of what the mainstream is saying is how he's losing and this judge did that and this. No, it's all been overturned. And if you listen to the way he worded that answer, that is the whole premise. That is the whole point to why the tariffs he's been implementing are so impactful. The system itself down in the States doesn't allow itself to be weak. The Constitution is written in a way to always make sure that first of all, the individual, the citizen, is treated first. And in order for that to happen, you cannot put in rules or laws that make them weaker than any other person or especially outside nation. Trump is absolutely right. And our media, our socialist media, fails to recognize the fact that the States is built on the fundamental principle of freedom and equality. Not like what our government and our court systems have been doing to us, where they have been removing those. We don't have freedom unless the government says we can do this. Like they're going after hospitals and churches that are, part of a religion. You have to believe the way the government believes. Or we take away privileges and we start taxing you and we start beating you up. That is not freedom and equality. That is not democracy. That is socialism. So moving on.
So July 9th is coming up. What are you going to do about the end of the pause in the tariffs?
It's so simple. We're sending letters out. I'd rather do it now. My guys, hey, I have great guys, Scott, Howard, other people, Jameson. They're talking to all these countries. We made a deal pretty much with India. We made a deal with China. We made a deal with UK, great people. We made deals. But I'd rather just send them a letter, a very fair letter, saying, congratulations, we're going to allow you to trade in the United States of America you're going to pay a 25% tariff or 20% or 40 or 50%. I would rather do that. So when I get,
We're not going to extend the pause.
I don't think I'll need to because I could. No big deal. It's like TikTok. I'm extending that, but no big deal. We have a buyer for TikTok, by the way. I think I'll need probably China approval, and I think President Xi will probably do it.
Who's buying?
I'll tell you in about 2 weeks.
A big technology company there.
Very, very wealthy people. It's a group of very wealthy people. But what I want to do is, and what I will do just sometime prior to the 9th, is we'll send a letter to all these countries. There's 200 countries. You can't talk to all of them, no matter how many people you have. You can't talk to all of them. We'll send a letter and we'll say we would consider it a great honor, and this is what you'll have to do to shop in the United States. We're like a department store to shop in the United States, and you'll pay a 25% tariff, and we wish you a lot of luck. And that's the end of the trade deal, because we have something that nobody has. But if I didn't get elected, I'm telling you, we wouldn't have had a country left. You know that better than anybody. Nobody covers it better than you. If I didn't turn this thing around, this big ship around, we turned it around. Just like those ships coming out of China, they were coming and loaded, and in the middle of the ocean, they were forced to go back because at 145% tariff, Walmart, nobody wanted their product. And that caused a big problem for China. And then I helped China.
So
by reducing it.
We still don't know. We don't have the clarity on what you're going to do with these expiration of these pauses. July 9th?
No, I think I thought I just
August 12th
said
with
it.
China.
No, I thought I just said it. You ready?
You're going to send the letters.
I'm going to send letters. That's the end of the trade deal. I could send one to Japan. Dear Mr. Japan, here's the story. You're going to pay a 25% tariff on your cars. So we give Japan no cars. They won't take our cars, right? And yet we take millions and millions of their cars into the United States. It's not fair. And I explained that to Japan, and they understand it. And we have a big deficit with Japan, and they understand that too. Now, we have oil. They could take a lot of oil. They could take a lot of other things. But basically, and I'm for doing it right now, we send letters out to all of the countries explaining to them, we'll look at the deficit we have or whatever it is with the country. We'll look at how a country treats us. Are they good? Are they not so good? Some countries, we don't care. We'll just send a high number out. But we're going to be sending letters out starting pretty soon. No, we don't have to meet. We understand. We have all the numbers. Listen, what we're going to do is we're going to send, and we're going to say, congratulations, we're allowing you to shop in the United States of America. You're going to pay a 25% tariff or a 35% or 50% or 10%.
I'll tell you what the
So, just so we're clear on everything, I'm going to take you back a few days to what the mainstream was, everybody's touting the elbows up demise of Canada, but they're making it out in a good way, like Carney is the, as they like to say, the Trump whisperer. So let's just clarify.
Let's move on to Canada's desire, because you said a lot, Canada will lead. You want to help lead, form new coalitions. You've said, in fact, if the United States no longer wants to lead, Canada will. Try to build a coalition of like-minded nations with like-minded values, etc., and who believe in international cooperation. What does that look like? And is that something that will trigger President Trump into more anger? He's already got these tariffs, and he's already said, if you guys essentially try to gang up on me, you'll have to pay for it even more dearly.
I think we have to look at this in the way we would like to lead, the way European Union would like to lead, a number of Asian countries as well, is in a positive respect. If the U.S. is pulling back from multilateralism, as it is with respect to trade, these are effectively, U.S. trade policy is now bilateral. If the U.S. is pulling back, there are others of us who do believe in multilateralism. So, as you know, literally, I'm coming here in the last 12 hours ago. I was in Brussels, agreeing at the Canada-EU summit, agreeing a very comprehensive partnership and a process to have an ever closer economic, defense, and security partnership between Canada and the EU. That is an example of two jurisdictions, in the case of the EU, that believe in multilateralism, believe in the rule of law, believe in fair and open trade, believe in defense cooperation. So that's an example of leadership, if you will, that's positive. It's not it's a reaction, if you will, to what's happening in the United States. But it's not a reaction against the United States. It's for something, not against.
But President Trump tends to be A, transactional, and B, very personal. And sometimes he thinks, or maybe you know differently. Apparently, they say that you're the Trump whisperer of the leaders.
I'm not
and
sure
that you're on texting, relations with him, and you're constantly talking. So is he still saying he wants to annex Canada?
He's not. He's not. He admires Canada, I think it's fair to say, and maybe for a period of time coveted Canada. But
you've put that to bed.
Well, look, we're two sovereign nations who are discussing the future of our trade relationships, our defense partnership, which has been very strong in the past. How is that going to evolve? But again, I would say it this way: the president is focused on a series of changing bilateral relations. We're at NATO. He's been
Right. We've been lacking. We've been sucking the hind tit. We've been an embarrassment. This guy is so full of himself. And the propaganda, you heard her, like just trying to bolster him up. Oh, you're the Trump whisperer and blah, 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 blah. And then reality sets in.
You said you're stopping all trade discussions with Canada?
Until such time as they drop certain taxes, yeah.
The digital
People
services
don't realize Canada is very nasty to deal with. They've charged our farmers up to 400%, almost 400% on certain products and certain, things our farmers want to send in. They have to pay 200, 300, 400%. People don't know that. Canada is a very tough country to deal with, I will say that. And I love Canada.
You have USMCA in place.
I know, but
You'll have to deal with it.
But USMCA is no good if they cheat.
What does that mean?
Well, there's been things going on that we don't like, and things going on where they took advantage. And hopefully we'll be fine with Canada. I love Canada. Frankly, Canada should be the 51st state, okay? It really should, because Canada relies entirely on the United States. We don't rely on Canada.
Mr. President, tell me about the significance of the Supreme Court ruling.
Now, see what I mean? The media has been pulling just this little wee. They've been nipping it. They do what they do. It's sound bites, right, and video clips in order for them to get their narrative across. Propaganda. It's all propaganda. Now, I'm going to migrate right over to an excellent interview that was posted on Juno. This is Keane Bext. He's one of the best up-and-coming reporters that Canada has. I've been following him for a long time. He's fabulous. Now, he's bounced around. This is actually his own counter signal, but because they partnership with other independent media, this was through Juno that it was actually put out. And again, I'll post all the links down below. I urge you to watch it in its full. Listen carefully.
The entire national zeitgeist on immigration has changed.
It has.
When the Fair Deal panel was happening to now,
Yeah.
there's a completely different opinion on immigration.
Totally true.
And I think maybe, what we've heard from the Alberta government has shifted as well. I think it's fair to say.
You know what? When we started off, I had just gotten elected when the Alberta's Calling campaign had started. And it was important because we'd had quarter after quarter of out-migration. We were some of the first to get rid of the COVID restrictions, and so we were ready to build again and ready to grow again. And it was looking as well like there was increased enthusiasm to invest in the oil and gas sector. So there was a very good reason why we were doing that Alberta's Calling campaign. We were calling to those who were unemployed Canadians in other parts of the country to come to Alberta. What we didn't anticipate was that the federal government was going to completely let off all controls of all streams of immigration at that time. Temporary foreign workers, asylum seekers, international students, as well as the other immigration streams. I think that 1 year period, instead of a normal amount of immigration and newcomers arriving, which would be about 1% of the population, so maybe around 400,000 people a year. They had 1.8 million. And you've seen the result of it. The reason why housing prices have spiked, why food affordability has spiked, why affordability on every front has spiked, is just because if you have too many people chasing too few jobs, too few homes, and too little employment, you're just going to end up causing problems. So the federal government blew it. It's such a tragedy because Alberta is probably one of the most welcoming places for newcomers on the entire planet. Our founding story from 1905 was one where we reached out to the world and said, hey, come here and help us build this place. And diaspora after diaspora after diaspora has. And we have one of the most diverse populations here. So people want newcomers. They want them to come here, be Canadian, be Albertan, leave their historic hatreds behind when they leave their home countries. And I think what people are now observing is that it just went too far. And I don't like seeing the fact that the sentiments towards immigration have changed almost 180. I think people want to continue having people who will come here, contribute to the economy, and be able to grow this province, but it's got to be a reasonable level.
Now, I'm going to go back to Trump now, because Trump has pulled off the impossible. What media has been trying to say, oh, immigration, oh no, it has nothing to do with crime. Oh no, that's an impossibility. You're not going to drop crime statistics. Blah, 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 blah. Here is the reality of what Trump has done with his immigration policy.
You're going to go down as a peacemaker. You're also going to go down with the president who had 0 border crossings in May. You secured the border most than anybody's ever done. But I don't know if you know this. You're on track right now to have the lowest murder rate in history in this country. And I think a lot largely go to the fact we closed down the border. If you want to comment on that, you might go down as the lowest murder rate in U.S. history.
Yeah, I saw that the other day, and it's an honor. I mean, and that's really even better because, you know, we've taken a lot of illegals into the country through the Biden administration that are murderers, 11,888 to be exact. And many of them are now gone. We got rid of them. They're back where they belong. But so it's a great honor. You know, if you took that out, the numbers would be even better. They've created a lot of problems.
You truth social earlier about getting money to the air traffic controller.
Now, statistically, anybody who understands or has seen where Canada has been and been turned into this post-national state has seen these numbers rise. And then add that to the bail not jail legislation that the Liberals have put in, has exasperated this and made it just blown it way out of proportion. We could cure most of the issues that we're having on violence on the streets by getting serious and putting in our vetting process that we were famous around the world. Countries were trying to copy our immigration process until the socialist took over the Liberal Party and created the post-national state we are in. Daniel Smith is aware of this. Pierre Poilievre is aware of this. And this is why you get mainstream, the propaganda arm of the socialist government, favoring anything and everything the Liberals say and constantly calling anybody who wants deportation or vetted immigration right-wing extremists. We have to fix our immigration system. It's out of control. Canada, per capita, has brought in more immigration than the States has during the Biden administration. Let that sink in. Moving on.
to actually, you're at 2%, but now they want 3.5% and eventually 5%. Isn't that just going to cripple your budgets?
It's important. These are important questions, and it's important to be clear what we are potentially, and I think likely to all agree tomorrow, which is, and let's take the 5% of GDP figure, which is a huge chunk. Big number.
How much is it actually for you?
5% of our GDP would be about $150 billion.
$150 billion. We spend $1 billion, just over $1 billion a week on interest from the last 10 years of this socialist party, running our country into the ground. We could have afforded this 10 years ago. All of a sudden, they're going to step up to the plate, but they put dates on. And it just so happens the dates that all of these implementations come in, fall in after the next American election. Trump is keen to this. He knows what's going on. And this is why he keeps saying the tariffs are going to come and go. And you don't trust certain people. You give them the benefit of the doubt. He's giving Canada the benefit of the doubt. He's giving a lot of these NATO countries the benefit of the doubt. But if they start doing what we've been doing for the last 30 years and just procrastinating, he's going to get serious and put the hammer down.
I mean, that's a lot.
It's a lot of numbers.
Per year?
Per year.
That's a lot.
Of course, it
so
is
it means
a lot.
that's stuff that you can't give to your own citizens.
Well, okay, but let's start.
Here comes the socialist.
Break it down.
You know.
So, a little less than a third of that overall number is spending on things that, quite frankly, we're already doing to build the resilience of our economy. So it can be domestic resilience. It can be defending in areas that support defense, but also support other things. So I'll give an example. Critical minerals. It is obvious, I think, to everyone now, the risk that's run being fully dependent on China for critical minerals, including rare earths, magnets, and others, not just for defense industry, but for the auto industry and others. Canada has one of the biggest and most varied deposits of critical minerals,
which Trump was coveting.
We are going to develop those. We're going to develop those in Canadian interests. We're going to develop some of them in partnership with the European Union itself and European Union member states, with the UK, other partners. Some of the spending for that counts towards that 5%. In fact, a lot of it will count towards that 5% because it's infrastructure spending, it's ports and railroads and other ways to get these minerals out. So that's something that benefits the Canadian economy, but is also part of our NATO, our new NATO responsibilities.
Now, how does Trump feel about the European Union? He's warned this in previous tweets months ago, that if Canada thinks it's going to all of a sudden join the EU and start taking on the practices of the EU, he's going to put the hammer down.
Sir, you said a moment ago that it won't work out very well for Europe on trade. Does that mean you want to cut off those negotiations as well and just tell them what?
No, well, they've been very tough. The European Union was formed in order to take advantage of the United States on trade. That was why they were formed, and they're nasty. They're very nasty. We have a good relationship. I'm dealing with Ursula right now and the group. But it's a very tough situation. They have been unbelievably bad to us. If you look at past precedents, they've treated them very badly. They're being very nice to me because I get it. I know the system, and we have the cards. We have the cards far more than they do, and they have not treated us well. And they're coming to us right now. You know, I said I was going to put on a 50% tariff. As soon as I said that, I put it out on Truth. As soon as I said that, they came to the table. They didn't want to come to the table. My people were telling me, Scott was telling me, and the whole group was telling me that not a good situation. They want to tap it down the line. They don't want to really deal. So I said, we're going to put a 50% tariff on you. Then Howard, as you know, was very much involved, Lutnick, Commerce, and he said, they don't want to talk. As soon as I put that on, I was getting calls from them like, can we meet tomorrow? And the problem is they have a lot of very unfair taxes. They have a lot of taxes that you wouldn't put on, and they sue all our companies. They're constantly suing Apple and Google and all of these companies, and getting in front of judges that essentially almost work for them. I guess they do work for them. They're European Union judges, and they're getting these crazy rewards. Apple was fined $17 billion, and others are being fined tremendous numbers of dollars. They're nasty people, and I don't want them affecting U.S. companies. I don't want that. If anybody's going to affect a U.S. company, I want it to be us. And if they're going to have to pay a penalty or a fine, let it be to us. So they've done this for a long time, for years, but they're very nasty. The European Union is very nasty, there's no question, but they'll learn not to be so nasty very soon. They know that. They know it's coming.
So there you have it, right from Trump's mouth. This is the reality. This is what's going to happen. And if Canada keeps going down the path that it's going down with Carney, you got to remember, he went and manipulated the UK already, and tried to put in a lot of this backdoor legislation to promote investors into this green technology that he himself ran the investment firm, that they're in the courts down in the United States. I mean, the whole conglomerate is being cut to pieces because of the American administration. They're tired of it. They're seeing the illegalities, and they're seeing how these corporations are using our own systems of democracy against us to force in a socialist power grab on businesses. He's not going to take it. He's not going to take it sitting down. He's going to fight it tooth and nail. And in the meantime, there's Canada. Nothing's changed.
The military is hugely important here. It is a war.
Are you going to try to persuade Trump to keep supporting Ukraine
Yes.
militarily? Militarily?
Yes, absolutely. Because it is. It's not. Yes, we have a diaspora, and it's, of course, that's important, and there's personal ties. But this is about rule of law. It's about territorial integrity. It's about support for democracy.
You heard that, right? Let's try that again.
Rule of law. It's about territorial integrity. It's about support for democracy, and it has it does have those wider implications. It's also it has real security implications for much of Europe.
Now, I put this clip in here specifically because a lot of people aren't aware the fascist government that we have. Well, let's just listen.
Heavily redacted documents that I obtained reveal that Ottawa is seeking advice on Alberta's independence from a top Crown lawyer who successfully argued in the Supreme Court that Quebec had no unilateral right to leave Canada after the narrow 1995 separation vote. Citing solicitor-client privilege, a vast majority of the contents of the documents that showed the Department of Justice's communication surrounding Alberta's potential separation were blacked out, except for the names of those consulted. Correspondence dated from May 15th to May 23rd contain emails between the Department of Justice's Senior General Counsel on Constitutional Law, Warren J. Newman, Senior General Counsel on Indigenous Rights and Relations, Uzma Isanula, and Crown Indigenous Relations Senior Director, John Topping. Newman acted as co-counsel for the Attorney General of Canada in 1998 when the Liberal government under Jean Chrétien shut down Quebec's secessionist arguments in the Supreme Court of Canada. The court ruled that Quebec could not legally secede from Canada on its own because the Canadian Constitution does not allow it, and that secession could only happen through negotiations involving all provinces and the federal government. In a reflection on the 10th anniversary of the Supreme Court's decision, Newman wrote that, quote, "The Supreme Court of Canada confirmed that unilateral secession would be an unlawful act under the Constitution and a violation of the Canadian legal order, a revolution." He added that even with the successful referendum, a province would not gain the legal right to break away. Instead, such a vote would, quote, "give rise to an obligation of all parties to the Federation to negotiate terms and conditions." The department defended redacting nearly the entirety of the provided documents. It said, quote, "You will note that certain records or portions thereof have been withheld under Section 23, Solicitor-Client Privilege Information, of the Act." However, this does confirm that this was a legal consultation, not just a conversation among buddies. The inclusion of Crown Indigenous Relations officials also confirms the government is weighing the role of First Nations in any future secession scenario. Indigenous leaders across Alberta have spoken out against Premier Danielle Smith's Bill 54, which lowers the threshold for citizen-initiated referenda and could pave the way for a future separation vote. Still, constitutional experts say First Nations do not have the legal authority to veto a vote. Canadian Constitution Foundation lawyer Josh DeHaas previously told True North, quote, "There is nothing I'm aware of that would suggest that First Nations people could prevent those discussions from taking place." Newman agreed that a clear majority vote on a province's desire to leave Canada would create a constitutional duty for all parties to negotiate. He said, quote, "The conduct of the parties would be governed by constitutional principles, federalism, democracy, constitutionalism itself, and the rule of law, and the protection of minorities. A political majority that did not act in accordance with the underlying constitutional principles would put at risk the legitimacy of the exercise of its rights. The conduct of the parties would assume primary constitutional significance. Secession could not be achieved under the Constitution unilaterally, that is, without principled negotiation within the existing constitutional framework." Despite the photos of the heavily redacted pages showing nearly full-page blackouts, they offer no insight into Ottawa's current stance, as Alberta separatists move closer to meeting the legal threshold for a province-wide referendum. Let's get into our next story.
So, they know this is serious. They know. The media knows. Everybody knows who should know, except for the mass amount of Canadians, especially out east, who think that this is just a fringe group. It's not a fringe group. The West wants out. Voting in this Liberal Party again has just fortified and now given even more voice to all those people who have been fighting for independence for generations. And with all of the information and all of the different people who have been involved, we're talking highly, highly intellectual and highly educated people who have found that this is actually going to be incredibly simple to do. So obviously the seriousness of the reality has kicked in of what socialist ideology the East has is completely, well, anybody out in the prairies is against it. And this is why the prairies, for the most part, is very conservative based, especially seeing where the Liberal Party has gone in the last 10 years. Now, I'm going to go back to this interview with Danielle Smith because I think it's imperative to kind of hear a little bit more of her. Well, Quebec likes to say that they're distinct. They're you know, all Alberta has, or all that Saskatchewan has, or all the West has is their resources. The resources are a huge factor, but we're not socialists. The majority of the West are completely against anything that goes against our freedoms. So while Carney drags Canada down into the 51st state, breaking the nation, kissing Trump's butt in any which way possible, but yet trying to keep his investors happy, all under the guise of this green carbon bad idea, which is, again, insanity, the West has had enough. And who better to put it into words than Danielle Smith?
What I take from that result is that people are unhappy, but they're also willing to give my approach the benefit of the doubt, that let's give this new leader a chance, let's put the issues on the table, let's negotiate for a period of time, not too long, and let's try to get a change to those 9 terrible policies, among others, that have held Alberta back. So I feel like this is time limited. I take that sentiment very seriously, and I've told the Prime Minister he should too, because One of the things that they need to understand is that they've created it. This sentiment exists because of how Ottawa has treated our province in particular and some of our industries in particular. They created it because they are passing policy in areas that are our jurisdiction and dictating to us to deliver policy, to deliver different programs in a way that's offside with our values. So this is an Ottawa-created problem, which means it has an Ottawa-created solution. They've got to stop with the terrible policies, back off out of our jurisdiction, and allow Alberta to chart its own course.
But it wasn't just about Alberta. It was about Ottawa as well. I pressed the Premier. How much time will she give Mark Carney to repeal the Trudeau-era anti-Alberta laws, Bill C-48 and C-69, before she considers him to be just more of the same?
I think the fall. I mean, I've been in government now for 2.5 years. We've passed a lot of legislation in 2.5 years, including some pretty landmark legislation within the first 6 weeks of me getting elected. So I know that when you put the pedal to the metal, you can get laws drafted. So they now have a break, and he has until September before he comes back in. So I'll be seeing what kind of accommodations and revisions and revocations he'll be making in the fall. I think it has.
And you got to remember, Poilievre told all of his ministers that if he wins, they weren't going to have summer holidays because of the seriousness of trouble that Canada is facing, mostly because of Liberals in the last 10 years. The Trump issue was a problem, but Poilievre and the Conservatives at least had the right frame of mind on how to deal with them. There would be shovels in the ground. There would be companies coming back to Canada if the Conservatives would have won. They were waiting at the borders. And they started losing interest when they saw the polling switching back to favor the Liberals again. One by one, they started to back away. And then when the Liberals won, they fled. They said, we're not coming back to this. We cannot build Canada is not a serious nation. They are a socialist, going fascist nation. And these companies do not want to invest in anything where the government at any point in time can change its mind, put in huge hurdles, or just stop them from doing something. That is completely against everything that a democracy should have. So when she's saying about what the Trudeau, the Liberal Party has done, it's not just the oil industry. It comes down to every aspect of where the Western belief system is in complete contradiction to what the Eastern thought process is. We don't believe that you should be able to force somebody to buy one thing and not another. We don't believe that you should hire somebody because of their skin color or their sexual orientation. We don't believe in any of these completely backwards thinking socialist ideas. We believe in equality. You pick the best person for the job, period. We believe in freedom, freedom of choice, freedom of religion, freedom of expression. These are all things that in the last 10 years, the Liberal Party has been, legislating against. They've been, and then not through just legislation, but through their means in which they attack provinces. They purposefully and spitefully put in laws that hurt the West because the West is not socialist. So you punish them. You punish them you beat them in order to see your way. And the West won't have it. We're not, obviously something happened out east because they voted Liberal again. You think they would have learned. But no, they took the bribe. They took the heat pump bribe. They took the removal of the carbon tax for them to buy votes. They took the bribe. They took the money against their morals, and they voted back in the Liberals. That completely destroyed the nation. That was the finishing touch. If the East Coast would have kept their morals high, and the East Coast is suffering right now because one of the highest demographic of Canadian immigrants that are fleeing to the West come from the East Coast. They just saw what their own people did, voting in, once again, this socialist government, and they're done. They're fleeing. It's the East Coast and Ontario. They're migrating to Saskatchewan and Alberta at record numbers. This is only going to help the West leave. And trust me, it's going to happen. This literally just put the concrete down. This whole election, and now them all on holidays. If Canada was in such serious trouble, you would think that they would be in Parliament right now. Here we have Trump saying, that's enough of that. We're just going to start tariffing, dropping negotiations. And where are the Liberals? They're out holidaying. Barbecue circuit, baby. Let's go and hit all of my rich sponsors so that we can ensure that we own not only the airwaves, but we can control all of these corporations because they tell their employees and their unions that you have to keep the Liberals in power because they don't have the ability to see the reality of what's happening. And again, this is why I need you to like, share, and subscribe. They need to get off propaganda and actually see the reality of what is happening to Canada. Now, this independent movement can either fix Canada or break Canada. And if it breaks Canada, those who are going to suffer the most are the people left behind, because the West will become one of the greatest nations on the planet.
Has to be that quick, because it doesn't make sense to say that you're going to create a 2-year to yes window and then dilly-dally for a year or two on fixing the underlying legislation that you've just passed a law to do a workaround. I mean, I think that the whole point of the workaround law is because it's a recognition that the other laws have created such a chill on investment that it's unworkable. So I think they could make some meaningful progress on a number of things starting in the fall. And I would hope that they would take that opportunity. I'm a bit disappointed that they haven't even started pre-positioning any of those changes.
Nope, they're all on holidays because this is the most existential threat Canada has ever been under. Trump, 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 Trump. Where are they?
In fact, the most idiotic one is that would be immediately on our doorstep is the net zero cars mandate. Just when you think about it, Canada, starting on January 1st, 20% of all cars sold are supposed to be net zero. So the hydrogen net zero vehicle industry doesn't really exist yet. The electric net zero vehicles are not produced in that kind of quantity, that 20% of all cars in Canada could be electric vehicles. Alberta alone, we buy 200,000 cars a year. We'd have to buy 40,000 electric vehicles starting in January, which are not produced in Canada, not produced in the US. The only place we could buy them from is China. And yet, because we don't want to buy them from China, we put 100% electric vehicle tax on it. Like, it is this kind of nonsensical pretzel logic that we would like to see some clarity out of the federal government on. And this would be a perfect opportunity for them to very quickly tell people that whatever they want to do aspirationally over time, they have to recognize that trying to implement it in January of 2026 is unachievable. And all it will do is it'll hurt Doug Ford's auto industry in Ontario because they're not producing electric cars. It means that rather than buying the 10 cars that we do produce here, many of them hybrid, we'd be having to look at something else or not buying them at all. So this is not good for the country. It's not nation building. And I think it would be a pretty easy win for him to find some way of modifying that policy to send a signal that he gets the message.
After the election, we saw Mark Carney was pretty chummy with Donald Trump. And a lot of people sort of saw what he said during the campaign, that he was going to be elbows up, and then he was going to defend Canada against Donald Trump. And he really positioned himself as the person who was going to do that compared to Pierre Poilievre. Do you think he's followed through on that, or has he turned into more of a thumbs up instead of elbows up?
I'm the type of person who believes in diplomacy. What I find interesting is that I was criticized for taking that very same approach.
Now, I'm sure most of you saw that was going on, how they were trying to crucify Daniel Smith for constantly being down negotiating, not only with the Trump administration, but around the world, trying to get her products to market. But especially during the Trump issues, when she started to see the pressures that was being pushed against Canada, she wanted to ensure that they understood down south and around the world that the West isn't the East. The West doesn't believe in socialism. The West wants to have a free trade system based on fairness, equality, etc. Something the East can't quite grasp. And they hammered her on it.
And now that the Prime Minister is doing it, it seemed to be great statesmanship. So I would say that we always should have taken a diplomatic approach with the Americans. My approach has always been, because I understand a little bit about the character of the US president, because I covered him when I was in the mainstream media, he's not going to be persuaded by an argument of don't do this or it will hurt me, or do that to benefit me. That's not his framework. We have to talk about how our relationship benefits America and American companies and American economy and American energy dominance. That's the framework that I have been putting forward, and it was successful. We have 0 tariffs on energy, 0 tariffs on food, 0 tariffs on most of the products coming out of Alberta. And that happens because when you engage and you talk to people from their area of and their perspective of interest, you can get a breakthrough. So I'm hoping that the Prime Minister may have learned that lesson too, and maybe we'll get a deal on the Canada-US Free Trade Agreement very soon. You've already seen that he did something that was so simple that the former Prime Minister refused to do, and that all the premiers were telling him to do. Commit to the 2% NATO target. We knew that if you didn't commit to the one thing that was so important to the Americans, then it's going to impact our trade. And I saw out of the NATO conference, the Prime Minister has said 5%, we're there. So I think that has already sent a signal that we're going to have a different relationship with not only the other allies that we have, but certainly with the United States.
And finally, I asked the question, no premier.
So she definitely is trying to remain pro-Canada. And again, I give her credit for this. I really do. Because, well, first of all, she doesn't want to be the sacrificial lamb if she does go full-fledged separatist. Now, later in this interview, he asks her the actual question, would you vote? If this referendum comes, would you vote to stay or would you vote to leave? I'm going to put the link down below so that you can actually watch her answer, and definitely make sure you follow and subscribe, not just me, but Juno and the Counter Signal. They are a great organization. They do such a good job. They are in every single aspect of what is going on in Canada. They're there. They're asking the right questions, the hard questions, and they're holding truth to power. That's what us independents fight for, we strive for. And with your help, liking, sharing, and subscribing, we can beat the propaganda narrative. It's important we do it. I want to thank all of my subscribers once again for helping with, oh man, the algorithms that have been smacking me around lately. But I've got a little army here behind me, so I want to thank you all. And thanks to my new subscribers who have joined up. I appreciate it. I hope I can not only keep you informed, but try to give you the whole story and cover as much of what's going on in Canada as possible. And just keep on exposing the lies that is the propaganda arm of our government, mainstream media. Until next time, I'm Alias to Guy. You've been watching the Canadian Citizen Journal. Stay informed.